All right, good morning, gentlemen. Bob here, back once again. We're ready to break down some Bitcoin, talk about the markets. Let's get right into it here. Bitcoin weekly chart. Everybody's probably sitting there saying, "Well, Bob, you said you thought we had a green week coming." Yeah, well, as of right now, it's certainly not. It's been green twice so far this week, but 3 days, 12 hours ago, we're certainly not green. I'm gonna take a few minutes today, talk a little bit about the altcoin market, and just kind of continue to rehash what we've been talking about on the chart that you see for Bitcoin here. I'll bring the SPX in, the S&P, just kind of talk about that briefly as well. But long story short here, and we've been talking about it, so none of this should come as any surprise. I'm still expecting Bitcoin to retest the low that was set over here. Okay. Again, you can kind of see how these reversals start. You get maybe you get this low. Let's see if we can get this out of the way. Actually, let's delete that out. So you got this low. You get a retest of the lows, if not putting in a lower low, and then eventually you do put in the higher low. I'm fully expecting it to come down here. I've been saying that. I'm going to keep saying that. The question becomes, does it actually stop here, or does the fact that people have a ton of stop losses in place become a problem, and it literally just craps all the way down to here, or even potentially to here? I mean, are these still possibilities? Sure, of course they are. I've been saying that they could be possibilities for a bit now, and nothing's changed in that regard, right? Like these are still distinct feasibilities, possibilities that it does all come all the way down here. Let's go ahead and just get the SPX in here right now, just so I can kind of show you though what I've been talking about and why it is that I'm kind of surprised still a little bit that Bitcoin has not rebounded at least a little bit. So here's the SPX, and you can see here, if you take this line, or even this line, let's take one of these two lines though, and just say, all right, well, it seems pretty fair to assume that we've got a falling wedge that has formed on the SPX as well. Well, the SPX did exactly what I've been waiting for Bitcoin to do for the last 2 weeks, really, is that finally it came down here, retested these lows, put in an equivalent low to this candle here, and then finally started to rebound. Now, the best guess I would have for you is that the SPX tries to rebound up to this $4,050 level, because that's where the 100 simple moving average is, right? Now let's flip back over to Bitcoin, and I'll reiterate to you what I've been saying is that Bitcoin still, to this point, has not retested the 100 simple moving average, right? It's right up here. It fell below it, and it just kept falling. So Bitcoin will make an attempt at some point here to push back up the chart to there. And just kind of look at this pattern. Let's assume that this falling wedge holds up. Then we come down here. Hopefully we don't wick way down here, but if we do, so be it. And then we're going to come up, probably finally get our retest of this level. So, just picture Bitcoin coming down here, starting to fire up this week. Maybe it actually fires up real hard and then sells back off to this level. So it actually takes maybe a few weeks to bounce out of there. But then we come up here, we break out of this line here, come up, retest this weekly support resistance that we lost at about 38,531. Roll back after it can't break free from this trend line. Roll back, boom, and then go. That is a standard falling wedge breakout kind of pattern, I guess, if you will, like that it would come down, exit, retest, some more often than not at a lower level, and you could just picture this happening, right? By the time, so as long as we get this recovery here, by the time it rolls over, the 200 simple should be somewhere in this range, assuming that it played out over the course of time and doesn't just rip on out of there, right? So those are the things I'll be looking for, and all of that makes sense, again, for the simple fact that you've got this trend line that basically held up for 2 years, well, a year plus. And then we finally lost it here. Well, we still haven't put in a retest of that line either, right? The uptrend line that dictated this kind of rising channel. We still haven't tested that. So we need to come out and retest it. And then, hey, if it wants to go ahead and roll on over at that point, so be it. We want to see some positive price action here before too much longer. So that's again, nothing's changed. I mean, we've been talking about this, right? I mean, I don't think any of this is coming as a shock to anybody that has listened to me enough, talk enough times to know, what I've been saying. And again, let's take a look. So here we've got a daily chart, and really, again, we've been talking about trying to break this trend line, and well, we've broken it a few times and broken back under it a few times, and here we are. We're officially under it. And really, there's only, assuming that it doesn't lose this level today, then there's only one more day left before this line crosses this 28.8, meaning that sometime today or tomorrow, something is going to happen, right? There's going to be a move one direction or the other, and it's going to be today or tomorrow. I mean, there are no other options. So, I've been talking about this little rising or ascending trend line here in the RSI, and I thought over here it was going to lose it. Well, it didn't. It kind of bounced up, and then that ended up being the bearish retest of that trend line. And then over the last 2 days, it's just slowly been working its way back down. Now, here's going to be the interesting thing, and I've talked about how this seems to happen in these bear markets. And this is the first one that I've been through that's played out like this, where, especially on the downtrend side of the bear market, that it seems like we're constantly getting bullish divergence followed by bearish divergence, and it just keeps going back and forth between the two. So same concept here. If this thing does fall down to here, as of right now, so let's say that it closed out today at this level right here exactly. There's probably another bullish divergence because the RSI is showing equivalent lows, whereas this low is already slightly lower here. So that would be a weak bullish divergence, but it would be one. And that could make some sense, because that would, if we can round out the day here, we come up, we tap this again for another potential bearish retest of that level. And also, I suppose I could actually probably draw like a rounded top on this guy here. I could put a little bit of a rounding on there, and it would hold up fairly well also. So you've got that. Now I'm going to pull in a altcoin real quick, just because I want to show you what these kind of look like here. Let's bring Zcash in. So this is the rounding pattern on Zcash, and you can see exactly what happened here. Finally, as it came back, retested this weekly support resistance, kind of came back up into a little bit of a falling wedge. I was actually looking at this yesterday thinking, man, that could be a good quick op to maybe at least get back up to this level. And it did. Matter of fact, I was looking at it right here at the bottom of this pattern, and then it came up. Well, luckily I was watching Bitcoin at the same time, and I'm like, well, Bitcoin clearly seems like it's about to roll over, which it didn't roll over like this, right? Like Bitcoin is not down 15% today, but it did finally roll over out of a smaller pattern, and then boom. Now, Bitcoin dominance has been moving up. It's not spiking or anything, but it's been moving up, so it's just hammering the altcoins when it's doing that and pulling back at the same time. But you can see here on the hourly, this thing is deeply oversold. Even on the 4-hour, we're already into oversold territory. I don't look at this any differently than I look at Bitcoin right now. My assumption is that, again, we're going to come back down and sweep these lows, because you had all these people that thought, all right, this is perfect. I'm going to get in here on these alts and I'm going to ride them. Well, the market doesn't want people doing that, right? Like it purposely does this so that way, especially in this particular, like say Ethereum and Bitcoin, you got all these people out here that believe that they're just supposed to hodl that forever and never do anything with it. So what really is driving the market if it's not for short-term traders, right? Like that, let's be honest, like this market is heavily driven by short-term trading. And it makes sense because it's highly speculative, right? Like none of these are companies that have obvious revenue stream that you could sit here and say, all right, well, this market capitalization makes sense for this coin because blah blah blah. There are a few of those. Don't get me wrong. The exchanges themselves, and then there are a few here and there that have obvious revenue, but for the most part, that's simply not accurate, right? Like most of these things don't generate revenue; they're speculative. So, again, it's driven in large part by short-term investing, because again, and I suppose if things just especially when coins are initially brought out, a lot of people are willing to go ahead and just get in there. You hold it and you think, all right, well, I'm going to hold this forever. Well, at some point it gets to a peak level and then falls off and gives back 85, 90% of the gains. I can sit here and show you coin after coin. Like here, let's take a look at Zcash and see what that's done. Zcash was $370 at one point. It's currently sitting at 85. Okay, I've got a few other coins here. Oops. Let's see. Oh, yeah, Bitcoin, there it is, heading down to that 28.8 level again. So we see that. But yeah, there's another one here too. Let's get YFI in here. I think this one is like a perfect example of what this market actually does. It's fairly ridiculous, actually. But here, so like, right, so people get in here, they're like, all right, I'm buying this $34,000 coin, and then all of a sudden it goes down to 10. Well, as it gets down to 10, and then all of a sudden it's nearly $100,000, right? It's over 90,000, and as of today, it's $7,900 and $7,928 as of right this second. And again, just look at the weekly charts here. Everything is getting to deeply oversold levels at this point. So, it's fair to say that in reality, we've been in a bear market for a while for most of the alts, right? Like it's fair to say that when you look at this chart now. Now going back to here, you never would have thought, oh man, it's about to come off the rails and just spend months and months and months going down. But that's exactly what's happening in the market, right? You get these huge spikes here and there, and it's no different than what we've been seeing in, the traditional markets, right? You move down. Maybe it's a huge move down, then you get a huge impulse move up, and that's basically essentially the market structure that we've been looking at on all these coins for a while. Even from here, so like over this 3-week span of time there, 17,759 all the way up to 25,000. So I don't know what 40% off the top of my head. So again, we're getting these big, 43%. So we're getting these big spikes in the interim, but again, the long-term trend has just been down and down and down and down. Now, again, I bring all this up not to sit here and say, all of it's going to zero, because if I believe that would be the case, we would just be loaded up on shorts and we wouldn't look at anything else. But again, when you factor all this in, like, look at this. This is a perfect opportunity to double bottom based on a very significant low. Obviously, it got down to 74.86 here. This is a great opportunity to double bottom, right? Like, this couldn't get any better. I mean, you got a coin that was nearly 100,000 at one point that's down to 7,000. Even if it doesn't bounce and reset and go to a new all-time high, I mean, let's use some logic here. It would be fair to believe that at some point it at least comes back up and retests this level. No different than Bitcoin, and how I've been saying, man, we've at some point we've got to retest the 100 simple moving average on the weekly chart. This has got to come back up and eventually make an attempt to touch the 21 simple, which right now is there. But let's say it takes, say, 5-6 weeks to get back out of here. Well, at some point that'll come down. So maybe, say 16,000, 15, so you can double up from here potentially. But I was talking to my buddy this morning though, and I mean, I don't know. It seems to me as though this just has the feeling, and again, not having been through a bear market previously in this capacity. I mean, how low should they go? I guess I don't know, but I mean, you know, even if you had, like, again, if you had bought YFI at that, when it fell all the way to its bottom at 77.30 or so, $7,700 back in November of 2020, if you didn't sell it, you are now back to square one. You've literally made no money off that coin. So somebody in that position, and let's be honest, how many people bought it there? So somebody in that position is going to look at that and be like, man, I've held this thing for a year and a half. I've literally made no money because I didn't take any profits, right? But for somebody who bought it, as it was already on the way up, let's say they bought that thing at 20,000, there was a point where it got down to about 17, it rebounded to 25. They're feeling good again, right? They're like, oh, this is great. And then boom, we'll spend the next several weeks falling. Then all of a sudden they start to see something that looks like maybe a sign that it's going to, go back the other direction, and it hasn't. In my mind, this is a perfect final capitulation event. Like this, like anybody. Same thing with XRP. I told you guys this before. My initial buy on XRP was at 30 cents. You know where it is right now? 38 cents. So just imagine, if I'm sitting here and I'm a holder. And I'm not taking profits or anything. I'm just sitting there doing what I'm told to do, and I'm just holding it forever. I'm sitting here cursing, the day that I was born, for the simple fact that I all of a sudden I'm up 10% on my money, right? 20%. So, again, and I fully expect that, just like I'm sitting here talking about these other coins, like this is going to be that this feels like a final capitulation type event. I mean, it just does. Bitcoin really isn't getting beat up that bad. It's just been ranging, but altcoins are just getting peppered. So this seems like the perfect time. And even if Bitcoin loses this 28.8 level, so be it. Go ahead. Let's get it over with. Let's get all these people selling all their coins, and let's go ahead and buy this stuff up and ride these things back. Because, again, I fully expect, let's say Bitcoin does come down and retest this level, 26.5-ish, or say 20, whatever these numbers, 26, 25, 24. People are going to want to get that off their hands, and this is going to be a good opportunity for us to swoop in and go ahead and pick up the pieces that are left behind. So that's really what I'm looking for at this point, right? I mean, again, there have been a few days over the last 2 weeks or so that I've looked at this and said, man, sure looks like we're going to break out of that. And again, we just haven't. So at this point, the range we've been talking about, and let's actually get the short-term chart pulled up just so we can look at it. Our range that we've been working in is suddenly about to break down. But this is, so this here looks a lot like a bear pennant, all right? A bear pennant, you take the measured move from approximately 75% of the way through here. You drop it where it looks like it's falling out. All of a sudden, you got a measured move that, in fact, comes down to just below this low over here. So as of right this moment, this is a totally logical thing. However, what you're going to find is that a lot of times when you get these bear pennants and you get everybody's already been bearish, right? Like this thing, the market has been falling for months on end, right? Like this is what 5 months basically of sideways, and we're down from the 69K all-time high. So this is a perfect opportunity, I think, for the market to come in and say, all right, all you bears out there, you think you're going to get this measured move all the way down to here, don't you? But guess what? We're going to go ahead and instead, we're going to go ahead and double bottom this thing out of here. And maybe it actually only comes down to this 28.2 level. And then just boom, right back up, right into this, and then right out the other side. Then all of a sudden, instead of looking down there at 26K, we get a bearish fake out essentially. All of a sudden, this thing's coming back up. Now we're talking 33K, which gets us right up here to about where the 200 simple moving average is on the 4-hour chart. So that's really what we're going to be looking for here. At least that's what I'm looking for. Now, again, I could probably draw a rounded top on this guy right here, right? Like this is definitely got a rounding to it. Same idea. I mean, the measured move wouldn't be quite as significant. So it'd be more like this. And then you lose this level, and all of a sudden, you know, you're slightly above here. So maybe something in the 27 range. But again, you know, I am not looking for it to just fall into the abyss at this point. Will it? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, anything's possible, obviously, and especially in this market. But I'm not looking for it to come down below here again. Or if it does, it's not. I don't expect it to be drastically lower. And again, you know, I mean, you know, these fib analysis items here. So you got the 0 level here, 1.618. That'd be a golden pocket move. Could be a good one. Sure. Could be a good one there. Maybe a wick down there. Maybe even a wick down here. But again, I'm just much more inclined to believe at this point that, especially with the SPX, you know, putting in a green week, I just, you know, with Bitcoin being a 24/7 trade, so like, you know, the stock market's only got 2 more days left to go in this week, whereas Bitcoin still got 4 days essentially left to go this week, right? Well, 3.5, but you know, at that point, I guess my ultimate point here is that you know, Bitcoin's going to do some things over the weekend that the SPX isn't going to do, right? I mean, that part should be fairly evident, but if let's say that you know, we do get this downside push today and tomorrow, right? Let's say the next 2 days are just brutal, just absolutely terrible, and you know, probably, and just to be clear, what would more than likely happen is we give up this level. If it's going to come off the rails a little bit, we give up this level today, come down in here maybe, and like I said, this chart says that you could get one more like bounce out of it, but let's say that it comes down to here, then it bounces, touches right here. That gives us a bearish retest of this line, and then so I would say, yeah, I mean, maybe today it doesn't give up all the goods, and then tomorrow maybe it more so does, but then it's got all weekend to recover, right? And that's all I'm getting at here, is that we've at least got an opportunity to still see this thing get, you know, just absolutely pounded, and yet still recover before the week ends, potentially at least. So yeah, I mean, that's basically where we're at here. You know, bulls have been defending this level. Do they have anything left in the tank to defend it? That's a great question, and to be frank, I don't know that that's very likely. I mean, this is when you get retested this many times, there's this concept called buyer exhaustion, right? Like, man, I told myself I was going to buy it every time it touched here. Again, if let's say I'm buying it here every time and I'm not taking profits, all I'm doing is I'm sitting here loading up a bag that ultimately I'm gonna set a stop loss just below this line, right? And I'm gonna come out of it with no money. So I got to imagine that the bulls are feeling as though, hey, this seems like it's probably not going to work out to my benefit, right? Like, just to continue to buy this line, just to keep coming back up here and get rejected at 30,700 or so. Why am I going to keep doing that? So I expect, since the bears seem to have been winning out, although again the bulls have been doing okay. Finally, though, we put in a truly lower low here yesterday, and officially we are resuming a downtrend. But again, my expectation is currently has been ish that we're just going to put in. We're going to retest the range low, and then we're going to get on out of here. So. So we shall see. We shall see, right? Like I obviously nothing's guaranteed, but As of right now, other than this little bullish kind of fake out move right here that just totally capitulated out, it is holding this trend line that cut through here, and you can see it a lot better on shorter time frames than an hour, but you can see where it cuts through, and it is now holding this line. If this is a descending triangle of sorts, measure a move from here to there, all of a sudden that puts us down somewhere in here. So again, just look for it to at least get down to here. And again, outside scenarios where it could get here. There's some pretty good sell volume here. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But again, I feel fairly comfortable to sit here and tell you that again, it just feels like we are working our way towards a final capitulation event, and something that is just going to scare all of the weakest hands right out of this market just in time for it to make some moves to the upside. Now again, and I've mentioned this before, traders take the summer off, so the reality is it feasible that we get a final capitulation event that does not rocket back up to the upside? Sure. All because, for the simple fact that it is the summer. And, if that happens, then again, let's revisit, what it looked like when we had the May capitulation last year and the amount of time it spent after that capitulation event trying to recover. That was this part. But, I feel, given that this... And I won't get the whole thing in there, but this move from here to there is fairly equivalent, really, even to a large extent, this move from here just to there, right? I mean, it came down below here, obviously, but definitely it's shorter, obviously, than the move from here to there. So, I mean, is there some indication in my mind, as I've been saying, that it really kind of feels as though this thing's already been beaten up enough? Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's, how much more of a beatdown can you take in Bitcoin and or the altcoin markets before they truly crumble, right? So, I mean, at some point this thing has to bounce, and it's got to be there. It's got to be there. We're basically oversold on the weekly, right above the oversold level. So, again, we get a final capitulation event that gets us to that oversold level, and at that point, I would expect that you got people that are buying oversold bounces. So at the very least, again, keep that in mind that this recovery that I refer to isn't necessarily going to be like a full blown we're going to go and set new all time highs. No, it's the recovery itself is going to be grueling. But I think that again, if we come up here. After we get this and we come up here, retest that level, maybe all of a sudden we flip this back into support, or this area into support. Probably we flip this level into support would be my best guess. And then all of a sudden, once we've made that move, boom, pop back up into this pattern. And then at that point, now the interesting thing would be that if let's say, so Bitcoin held this uptrend here. Let's say that this whole thing ends up being a fake out, and it kind of just cruises along here until it gets to this level. If it breaks back up into this pattern, that would be like the ultimate bear fake. I mean, I don't know that I would say necessarily that it then goes on to recover to the top of the pattern, because then all of a sudden, instead of talking about like 54,000, 56,000, like I've been looking at, all of a sudden now we're talking that this thing maybe actually does find a way to get up to, say, 87,000 or even higher, 123. But this would be if Bitcoin breaks back up into this pattern after kind of a bearish fake out, then I probably would be ultimately looking for something in the neighborhood. Again, I've been saying this region, but I think without a doubt, you got to consider the possibility that it does make its way all the way back to the top of the pattern, all because this would have been a massive bearish fake out. And again, I guess the concept would be that ideally the 100 simple here would have held and we would have at least started bouncing up through here into an ascending triangle, whereas that level was lost, and it was potentially unexpectedly lost. Not based on the pattern, but based on the fact that you would have expected to find support on that. Hey, very long video today, just to say the same stuff we're always talking about. But again, I think with it getting closer and closer, it's time to start, kind of mentally preparing for one of the two scenarios that we either, absolutely rip off out of here, or this thing's in trouble, right? It's going to be, potentially one of the above. Weekly chart, again, same concept. Here's your 50, or monthly chart. Here's your 50, simple. So if it wanted to come down here, that's still always a feasibility too. But giant falling wedge on the monthly, giant falling wedge on the weekly. At some point, this thing's breaking out to the upside, and it's going to be potentially epic. So, hey, appreciate you guys. Like I said, we're all looking forward to the end of this downside as much as anybody. And once it finally starts making its way back to the upside and actually starts making consistent moves to the upside, you will see that we will load up accordingly. Appreciate you guys. Hope you enjoyed the content as always. We'll talk soon.